In my restaurant, we go through a couple dozen jars of pickled red onions every week, and we've learned a few tricks over the years. And today I'm going to show you everything I know about pickled red onions. In its simplest form, a pickled red onion is basically an onion submerged in vinegar. This is not going to win you any Michelin stars, but it's basically the simplest version of the recipe. Now, of course, we should peel this and chop this up, and maybe we should add more than just straight vinegar. The first step in making a great pickled onion is to pick a great onion. I've seen lots of videos out there claiming that you can rescue kind of like worn out produce from your refrigerator by pickling it, but garbage in, garbage out. The best way to make a good pickle is to start with a nice, fresh, crunchy vegetable, as long as it's not desiccated and dried out. So if you squeeze here where the plant used to be, if that's really soft, you probably don't have a great onion. So simply we're just going to cut the ends off and we're going to discard them. In this onion I can see that it is a bit soft and we have some layers of the onion that aren't that great. We don't want to use those. We want to be selective about our onion, and we want to only pick the parts of the onion that are going to pickle well. On the outer layer of the onion that I have here, there's a bit here that's a bit thin. I'm just going to discard that and not use this outer layer at all. I want just the best. And now on the inside, there's also a part here that's not great. So I'm also going to remove that. Here you can see that you have this really thin bit, and I'll show you what happens if you use that bit of the onion. I can also see that this here is really thin, so I'm going to remove that as well. And again, there's one layer inside this onion that's sort of dried out a bit, and I'm going to take that out. That goes into the stock pot. Pickle a bit of a thin layer of the onion or a bit of the skin. We get this pickled, leathery, tough bit. And if it ends up in whatever you're putting your pickled onions in or on, like say a hamburger, a sandwich, a salad, you're going to bite into that and it's going to pull out of the sandwich and it's going to be very unpleasant. It's going to be like having a piece of paper in your mouth. Don't want those in the pickles. You want to extricate those from the situation as soon as you see them. We have several choices when we go to slice our onion. You can dice these and pickle those if you want more of a relish or a mignonette, as we might call it. One option is you can slice the onion from pole to pole, from the top of the onion to the bottom of the onion. I prefer to cut my onions from east to west. That way, when these onions are finished pickling, they conform more to the shape of the container that they're in and also the food that they're on. So they'll lay flat on the hamburger as opposed to an onion that is chopped from pole to pole that's going to remain stiff and hold its shape. Now you could decide that you prefer this over this, but when you're making pickled onions, you have a choice. Try slicing them pole to pole and then try slicing them east to west and see what you prefer. The way I like to do it, when you slice the end off an onion, one side is going to be a series of concentric circles and the other side is going to have two lobes. I like to find those two lobes and separate them by cutting in between them. And then I get like sort of two half onions that hold together pretty well. The easiest thing you can do to keep onions from making you cry is to have a nice damp rag and clean your knife and your surface continuously. It also really helps to move your onions into a container that has a lid. And as you cut a couple of onions, move your onions into that container, put the lid on. That keeps the gas from rising off of the onions and getting into your eyes. Another trick is to have a fan that blows the gases from the onion off to the side. You'll see when you cut onions that the juice will come out, and a fresh onion in the summer is going to be more problematic than this time of year, but there's juice now on my knife. You'll see the shininess of the liquid, and that's where the gases come from. So I'm going to remove that. Once you've chopped your onions, then we load it into our clean mason jar. This pickle is a quick pickle, and a quick pickle is a pickle that lives in the fridge. Now that we've sliced our onions and we have them in our clean mason jar, we're going to brine the onions. Now, a simple brine if you don't want to get into it too deeply, is you can just take vinegar and you can boil it and pour it over top. It's really important to heat the brine up hot. Our recipe in the restaurant calls for boiling brine to be poured over the pickles, but in the past, people have tried to just use warm. And if you use just warm brine or warm vinegar over top of your pickles, the pickles are not going to get that bright pink color, and they're also going to start to turn gray pretty rapidly. So if you pour lukewarm brine or cold brine over your pickles, they will not turn fluorescent pink. They will likely turn gray. So these pickles will be safe because they'll be in a very acidic environment, but we do want to make sure that we pour boiling water over. It's safer and it looks better and it will hold the color for a longer period of time. As far as the brine goes, you could just put vinegar. It would be pretty sour, but it would be okay. If you like a really sour pickle, if you like vinegary things, it would probably be fine. But generally we mix around 1-to-1 vinegar with water. Now, I've also got a couple of other ingredients that we put in our pickled red onions at the restaurant, and that is sugar and salt. Now, if you aren't supposed to eat a lot of sugar or a lot of salt, you can omit these. They are not responsible for the safety of this pickle. They just are helping with the flavor. The acid is the ingredient that preserves the pickle, not the sugar, not the salt. If you're salting something, like my videos for salting meats, then yes, the salt is the important preservative in those recipes. If you're doing something like a fruit jam or a jelly, then the sugar is what's responsible for the preserving of the fruit or the vegetable. In the case of pickles, like sour pickles and fridge pickles, it's the acid. So you can omit the other things as long as you keep the acid. We want the acid to be about 5% acetic acid. Here I'm just using straight white vinegar, but you can use cider vinegar or any other kind of vinegar that you want. You can add cloves or garlic or mustard seeds or star anise or whatever. Any sort of aromatic spice can go into here if that's what you like to do. In the restaurant, we want these to be nice and clean, and we don't want any bits of clove or anything like that stuck on them. So we just go straight up salt, sugar, white vinegar, and water. So the next step now is to bring these things to a boil, and then I'm going to pour them over the pickles. Okay, so I have my pot here. I'm going to add 1 cup of water, 1 cup of vinegar. Then I have some sugar here. This is about 3 tablespoons of sugar. And I have about 1 tablespoon of salt. I have a quick pickle video on my channel that goes into more details about the brine that I use, and you can look at that video for more details. Now that I have my sugar, vinegar, water, salt in the pot, I'm just gonna bring it to a boil. Okay, so my brine is boiling, and I'm just gonna now pour it over the onions thusly. So I'm going to leave these to cool on the counter. So over the next 48 hours, this is going to turn to this color. And it's going to stay this color for about 2 weeks, and then it's going to start to fade. And it's going to lose its crispness, and it's going to become kind of more sulfuric in flavor over that time. So these are best to use up in the next 2 to 3 weeks. After that, they kind of lose their joie de vivre, if I may. I would recommend using them in that time period. They're safe for a long time. If you keep these in the fridge, safe for a really long time. But the quality is best in the first 2 to 3 weeks. And you could eat them right now. I could eat these right now. There's nothing wrong with that. They're not pretty and they won't taste very good or very pickled, but they're safe. But 24, 48 hours, they're gonna taste chef's kiss. If you enjoyed this recipe, please hit the like button and subscribe, because there's more recipes like this where these came from, which is me.